Imagine hearing a sudden sharp slot machine crash, coins spilling, alarms chirping, and then an abrupt cut to silence. Let me ask you something. Have you ever had a moment where you realized you weren't just losing money, you were losing pieces of your life? 2 at a time? Because that was me. I didn't just lose a paycheck. I lost several paychecks. I lost 2 cars. I lost 2 houses. I lost 2 marriages. 2 chances at rebuilding before I even understood what was happening. It felt like life was taking things in pairs, as if one loss wasn't enough to get my attention. And for the longest time, I thought the problem was me, my willpower, my discipline, my character. But the truth was far more modern, more insidious, more engineered, and far more dangerous than anything I'd ever been taught to look out for. So, the story, my story, it begins. I remember the night everything snapped into focus. I was sitting in my car outside a casino, the second car I owned that year, and I was holding money that didn't belong to me. Not stolen, not borrowed, just redirected from places I thought I could fix later. You know what I mean? That's the part nobody talks about. People, they ask me, where did you even get the money to gamble with? And the answer is never simple. It was never simple. Sometimes I worked overtime. Sometimes I took cash advances from credit cards. Sometimes it was the rent money I swore I'd replace before the first of the month. Sometimes it was a refund check that was supposed to go towards savings or retirement. And sometimes in the darkest, most desperate times, it was money I justified taking from future me. The version of me I assumed would be stronger, smarter, or more responsible. But future me never showed up. Only the losses did. And that's where the real question comes in. The one I asked myself that night in the car. Why do I keep finding ways to get money for something that keeps taking everything from me? If you've ever asked yourself a version of that question, you're not alone and you're not broken. You're responding to a system, a business, an industry designed to keep you chasing. Here's what I didn't know back then. Mobile gambling platforms are engineered using the same behavioral science that keeps people glued to social media. The near miss effects, that activates the same brain chemistry as when you win. Okay? And losses trigger a survival mode panic that makes my brain believe the only way out is to keep on playing. And the more stressed, the more isolated, or the more overwhelmed I got, the more vulnerable my brain was to getting triggered from those cues. So I kept finding money, any money, to gamble with. It wasn't because I was reckless. It was because my brain had been hijacked. It had been rewired to believe that gambling was the only solution to the real pain, my deeper pains. But then gambling just created more pain. And that's not a character flaw. That's the trap. And if you're listening to this thinking, yeah, I've done that too, then I want you to hear this clearly. I get it. I know what it's like to juggle bills, to hide bank statements. I know what it's like to promise yourself you'll never do it again and then break that promise before the sun comes up. I know what it's like to feel ashamed of something you never planned, you never wanted, and you never imagined would take control of your life. Well, you're not weak. You're not alone. And you're not the only one who's lost two of everything before realizing what was fucking happening. And you're not beyond repair. Because here's the part of the story that matters most. I learned the modern pathway through gambling addiction. I learned how addiction works, how it hooks you, how it rewires the brain, how I finally understood the pathway out, okay? Not the old white knucklehead approach, not the same shame-based lectures that I heard in church, not outdated scripts, a real pathway, one built on compassion and neuroscience and community and practical tools that actually work in the real world. You know, I want to share with you the story of the moment that everything changed. The moment I realized that recovery wasn't about punishing myself or wasn't about perfection. It's about humanity, my humanity. It was about kindness first to myself and then to other people I meet. Recovery was about learning to live again without fear, without secrecy, and without losing anything else. So, if you ever felt trapped or confused or ashamed, well, maybe this community is for you.